Hello my good friends, welcome to yet another Digi fan art video. Although this one is going to be perhaps the most serious one out of the bunch because we're going to be discussing what could potentially be the strongest Digimon ever. And with strongest, I not only mean the official Digimon that were developed by the Digimon developers, but also among the Digimon made by us fans. That's why I'm going to just go straight into the subject. You see, in the Digimon multiverse, there have been a great variety of Digimon and digital life forms with powers reaching to the universal levels. There aren't many of them, but still a considerable amount. For a digital life form, I'm going to give the example of the D-Reaper, as we discussed it previously. If it wasn't stopped, then there is no reason why the D-Reaper wouldn't be capable of continuing until it reached the entirety of the Digimon Tamers universe. Truly a powerful life form that even was much too powerful for the hero's partners. I'm talking about Galantmon, who by then already could use its Crimson mode. A mode that is extremely powerful and a mode we have discussed in its entirety in its own video. Lucimon is also seen as a big villain, and it is a Digimon. It is a powerful villain for sure, but not immediately one with universal powers, if I could allow my opinion in this. In fact, having gone through some of the stories where Lucimon was featured in, I would say that while it is really impressive in terms of raw powers and magic, it is not that impressive if we are honest, especially when we compare it to some of the heavy hitters like the D-Reaper or even Bagramon, who is a fellow angel that is before it went into the dark route. But what's most impressive about Bagramon and Lucimon is that they are cunning as they are intelligent and strategic. Both may not be at the universal threat level initially, but they reached that level of a threat after they have used their intellect. For Bagramon, there is an entire video of 30 minutes that we made to explain it. Lucimon had reached its highest form in the Digimon Chronicle X story, where it not only fused with many Diaboromon who were enhanced with the X antibody, but also with the remaining members of the 7 Demon Lords who were also enhanced by the X antibody. They all became Ogudumon X, a body that was moved entirely by the mind of Lucimon. This was basically its strongest form and it became as powerful as a host computer. Heck, it became part of the system and no Digimon could harm it. That's why me personally, I was a bit pissed about how it was finished off because the level of powers it had reached was simply astounding. Phenomenal to say the least. Even evil Digimon sided with those who were already facing it because Ogudumon X was simply going to erase all in a matter of minutes if not seconds. But Ogudumon X is universal level and arguably even multiversal level. I say arguably because ultimately being powerful is one thing, but that does not mean that it has space-time capabilities that will help it travel to new dimensions and other timelines. Maybe it has, but it did not yet display those powers, as it was killed relatively quickly in the story it was featured in. But now, in this video, I am prepping you up for a fan art who showed a hypothetical Digimon that should go beyond anything we've seen so far. And for that, I need to take you back to Ogudumon X's line to go to Armageddemon. I'm going to show a segment of the explaining Armageddemon video we have once made, just to help you refresh why this one is such a threat. Let us do that. In the movie Digimon Adventure, Diaboromon's Revenge, Diaboromon had created billions of Kuramon that entered the real world. Obviously, when the Digidestined took notice, they sent Omnimon to the internet to deal with the menace, and Diaboromon's head got blown off. However, it was what Diaboromon intended to happen so that it could live on among the billions of Kuramon that had all escaped to the real world through various electronic devices. These many Kuramon fused in large quantities which caused a mutation that took the form of a Digi-egg, meaning that they went from the many fresh level Digimon they are, or baby level in other translation, to the ultra level Armageddemon, Diaboromon's alternate and more deadly form, who would be released from the Digi-egg. one that is so apocalyptic that it is affiliated with neither light nor darkness. Here is something interesting. As you know, DIABOROMON has the ability to make many copies of itself. The problem is that they were characterized by having lesser abilities than the original possessed. In other words, the copies grew less powerful than the original. However, by having produced Kuramon in large quantities and then fusing them, the process did not disperse its abilities, but instead enabled them to attain power greater than DIABOROMON by condensing them into one being. This explains why Armageddemon is a bit of an anomaly. We're going to get into its level of power in a moment. In the meanwhile, let me tell you that this Digimon is the real deal. Its name, Armageddon, refers to the location of the final battle between good and evil during the end times, as prophesied in the Bible. That is why this Digimon has been nicknamed the World Breaker. You see, Armageddemon is what is known as an Ultra Digimon or a Super Mega Digimon. It's not exactly a level above that of Mega levels, however it is seen more as a title which tells that a Digimon has surpassed the standards of power of conventional Mega level Digimon. Usually it's the fusions who get to that level, or Digimon who change modes, like let us say All-Force Vidramon Future Mode. There are some other Mega level Digimon who naturally reach levels beyond the standard Mega level, and Armageddemon is one such example. Just in case I did talk about the Digimon levels extensively in its own video, I will make sure to put the link towards it in the description box. Now, Armageddemon was so powerful that neither Omnimon nor Impelgemon Fighter Mode were able to defeat it. It was much too powerful and none of their attacks seemed to do even the smallest damage. They were both simply no match and ended up being badly injured by the World Breaker Digimon. To defeat it, Omnimon transformed itself into the Omni Sword, which would be held by Impelgemon to make it gain the Paladin mode. It is the same Digimon who is the founding father of the Royal Knights despite not being a member itself. I think we haven't talked about its powers enough, as we are still talking about the fusion of two fusions, meaning Impelgemon in its fighter mode and Omnimon, so it is probably stronger than all of the individual Royal Knights members. Which reminds me, by the way, we did talk extensively about the Impelgemon line in its own video, make sure to check it out if you haven't already, and we also talked about the various Omnimon in existence, many of which have their own specialties. The link is also in the description box. Anyway, when Impelgemon Paladin mode was fighting Armageddemon, it impaled the World Breaker Digimon through the snout, causing Armageddemon to disintegrate back into countless Kuramon that were then absorbed into the Omnisword with the help of the many bystanders' cell phones and digivices. And all Kuramon were sent back to the digital world, which might save the Earth for a moment, sure, but when you know what Kuramon and its line is capable of doing, this line has got to be either exterminated as quick as possible or at the very least contained to avoid another catastrophe. So, this fragment should tell you enough about Armageddemon and what it can do. But just to establish how powerful it really is, I went into a Reddit conversation about whether Armageddemon and Apocalypse are as strong as the 7 demon lords. The following was written about Armageddemon, here I quote: Apocalypse is around the same level as them. Armageddemon is above all of them. The demon lords are said to be on par with the Royal Knights. Omnimon is one of the strongest Royal Knights and Armageddemon one-shotted him. Adventurous Omnimon was shown to be at Royal Knight levels in 3. Armageddemon is probably on par with final evils like Ogudumon and Demon SU, meaning Super Ultimate, but below Galacticmon, who had both as servants and Exmon. Armageddemon has the unique privilege of being one of like 3 other Mons whose profiles explicitly reference a Super Ultimate, which is something Demon themselves are seeking. So far, the only other Digimon that I've referred to as powerhouses are Demon or Armageddemon. Armageddemon is definitely strong, beating the non-Royal Knight Omegamon of the heroes. It is probably matching well off against Lucimon Fall Down mode. Unquote. This is just to let you know how much of a threat Armageddemon truly is. Its feats are nothing short from impressive to say the least. So what we're going to do is put Armageddemon at the side for a while. And the reason why we do that is because there is a fan art that fused Armageddemon with Zeedmillenniummon. Now, we've already discussed Zeedmillenniummon in its own video, but I'm still going to cover it once more by simply showing you the fragments of that previous video. Because Zeedmillenniummon has got to be one of those Digimon that cannot be defeated. I'm going to show that fragment now from the Explaining MILLENNIUMMon video to put you up to speed. Here we go. Remember the Digimon Re-Arise storyline I used as an example, where Lucimon needed MILLENNIUMMon to digivolve into its final world-destroying form? Well, that form is called Zeedmillenniummon, a Digimon so huge the Digimon real-size comparison website can't even render anything from it. Zeedmillenniummon flies freely between space and time and is seen as a king of evil that is still trying to destroy all eras and worlds. And to be fair, it does have the means to do that. As the strongest MILLENNIUMMon variant, it can consign hostile opponents to oblivion across space and time, and so far, no one who has been brushed off by this technique has returned alive from space and time. It can fire 2 atomic rays from its mouth that destroys everything in their path. It can still create pocket dimensions with compressed time to trap the opponent in there for an eternity, and it can also collapse the entire dimension it created. For the bands of Digi code which wrap around Zeedmillenniummon, it is said that they are like chains which suppress its abilities, but it is unknown who could cast such a spell on it. Interestingly, the code on its bands either lead to the original web address for Digimon Web, even if that website is not active anymore, and when Zeedmillenniummon appeared in Digimon Ghost game, the bands instead point to the current web address for Digimon Web. It's a bit hard to interpret the significance of the website linked to the code written on the bands which restricts Zeedmillenniummon's power. According to some, it is a sort of meta joke to say that Bandai is the one who sealed its power. Some continued by claiming an entity that would be powerful enough to restrict such powerful Digimon would be none other than King Drasil itself, the mysterious host computer said to rule over all of the digital world on one server of the network, and an entity so powerful that it can, if so needed, reboot the entirety of the digital world. It could certainly be an interesting candidate, however, it is foretold that if Zeedmillenniummon is released from this spell, it will rain unfathomable destruction upon the digital world. Which prompts me to stop a little bit to try and gauge how powerful it could really be if not restrained by anything. I wanted to know how powerful Zeedmillenniummon truly is, because there are quite a few forums with long debates and it's quite hard to come to a conclusion. So what I'm going to do first is sum up what I have found that MILLENNIUMMon in the entirety of its Digivolution line has done or potentially can do, just to help you get a grasp of its capabilities. MILLENNIUMMon and the other members of its line are known to have done the following and are known to potentially do the following: bend time and space, control gravity, suck in digital matter, rule the entire Digiverse, defeat the Royal Knights, the Digimon Sovereigns and the 3 Great Angels, absorbed multiple zones and universes, create corrupted copies of protagonists from across the Digimon series, create pocket dimensions to trap opponents and collapse that dimension, create artificial Digimon called VR Digimon who are more powerful than the original selves, regenerate and multiply infinitely, turn others like humans into stone, destroy the soul of a person or a Digimon, conquered the future of the multiverse and covered it in chaos, create timelines, seal the universe and possibly other Digimon, destroy life and death, absorb any type of attack and turn it into energy, use Time Destroyer to restart a battle, and send people to any part of time. To be really fair with you all, when we are talking about Zeedmillenniummon, seriously, there are forums to this date where debates are still going on concerning how powerful it is, and quite frankly, it can't even be measured, especially when we consider the various depictions it has had. Heck, it has even been said that by just its existence, it can destroy an entire universe, so it is quite something to say the least. But now, I have been discussing both Armageddemon, who represents the Armageddon, and is deemed as extremely powerful, and there is Zeedmillenniummon, who is basically unbeatable. And despite all of that, its powers are being suppressed through the rings around it. Online I have found the art of what appears to be the fusion of both Armageddemon and Zeedmillenniummon, and quite frankly, first of all, I don't exactly know in what dark corner inside the Digimon multiverse would make spawn this fusion, but to have the apocalyptic beast Armageddemon, and essentially the god of time, space and twisted destiny, Zeedmillenniummon, come together, they would become something beyond imagination. Up to a point, the Digimon developers would likely not know what to do with it. What name would it be carrying? Endmon, to signify the end? Zeedmillenniummon? I have no idea, as we weren't really given a name for this fusion. We may not know the name, but we could predict some of its powers based on the two component Digimon who give birth to it. Its power would likely eclipse both of its origins. Armageddemon, who brings unstoppable physical devastation, while Zeedmillenniummon adds absolute control over time and reality itself, something even host computers can't. But I suspect that among its powers, it would probably be able to spawn infinite versions of itself across timelines, each a paradox copy that is immune to deletion, because that's what Millenniummon managed to do. It's basically impossible to completely erase it. To continue, this fusion would likely be able to bend past, present and future to its will, and would also be able to erase events before they ever occurred. And you know what? I guess it would simply become a being that could erase matter, data, memory, and even the concept of time itself. Quite frankly, if this one is being born, worlds would crumble, digital ecosystems would distort, and the mightiest defenders wouldn't be able to do a thing in a team, and let alone on their own. It is practically impossible to do anything against it, no matter how you look at it. The only way I believe it could be incapacitated would be if Digimon themselves, those who are at the opposition, would themselves also go into crazy fusions of their own. And to give you two examples, here is the fusion of both Alphamon with the Uryuken sword and Omegamon. As both component Digimon have the names Alpha and Omega, which means the beginning and the end, I think that we might be coming somewhat closer to defeat that crazy abomination that is the fusion between Zeedmillenniummon and Armageddemon, and yet I don't think it would be remotely close. Another interesting fusion to see at the sides of the opposition would be the combination of both Agumon with the bond of courage and Gabumon with the bond of friendship. Remember when we had discussed them both in their own respective videos? Normally if they were to take this form, they should never be able to digivolve anymore. Well, what if they were to combine their strength one last time to become the Omegamon bond of courage and friendship fusion? It would be a sort of last hope fusion, and yet, despite the strength it would be able to display, I simply cannot imagine whatever scenario where they could possibly have any chance. And I say so because Zeedmillenniummon's fusion with Armageddemon is still the master of time. Unless there is no way to incapacitate it to perform its moves, and unless it is not possible to put it in some kind of illusion or spell, something that would stop it from performing whatever magic, then I doubt there is anything that can be done against it. But maybe you guys have an idea of how it could be defeated. So I'd like to see what you guys have in mind in the comment section. Please let loose. This Digimon is already crazy enough, so I want to see crazy answers. Go crazy in the comment section, please. And also, if you like the pictures, know that all of them are placed in the description box. Make sure to like the video and to subscribe. It means the world for me. And know that all videos are placed in the different Digimon playlists on the channel, which are always updated. That way you can catch up to newer and older videos.